Hey everyone. I talked about in my last video about having lectures. There are two types of lectures. There's the text option that you should probably have seen on your Blackboard, and then I'll do some of these video lectures. So it's your preference if you want to listen to me talk over a video, or you can read the text yourself. They're not going to be like completely one-to-one, but most of it should have covered each other. Probably repeated in both places. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, some things we want to emphasize is that adolescence is a long term. You have early, middle, and late. The ages are listed there. So, early adolescence from 11 to 14 years of age, middle 15 to 17. That's pretty much when you start high school. And now we get into this period of late adolescence. That's 18 and up. The other term for this period of late adolescence is called emerging adulthood. That's because of the way our society has changed from the time when we used to be miniature adults, in the sense that children were expected to behave like adults or be trained to essentially be adults and get married off at super young ages. That still happens in some states, but generally, in lots of parts of the world where things aren't as good. But in America, at least, you are expected to go through this adolescent stage, right? And the 18 plus is for specifically individuals like yourself who might have gone to college. So college is another incubation period that's going on where we're continuing to develop this sense of adolescence, a sense of self, the sense of identity, and how we are going to interact with the rest of the world. So, yeah, the ways we are studying adolescence, the social and cultural aspects of it. This is the current society in which you live. How does society treat adolescents? What are the cultural implications? How is our culture changing over time? What are the big things going on right now? How is that influencing um, your perspectives on your development? Are we, I mean, we have this American first policy, right? How does that change from America being a world leader policy? So things like that would affect the next generation of individuals. We also talk about, okay boomer, right? You guys might have heard of that okay boomer thing. And that creates that generational divide that basically there's a new generation, a new group of adolescents, a new cohort that's going through who are starting to realize that, they don't match with the people who are running their world anymore. They want things to be different. Of course, the biological plays a role. Adolescence is the time for puberty. How does that change your thought processes? Lots of things go on during puberty. You can go from one moment playing with dolls and cars, and the next moment dealing with whatever has going on that's changed with your physical self, right? Voice changes, breakouts, hair changes, all kinds of stuff. But that's going to influence how other people look at you as well, right? There are biological changes. We are generally shallow, perceptive people. So how you look is going to influence how people react to you. We have this beautiful is good stereotype, for example. Um, Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, people who look good are generally treated better than people who do not. Cognitive, we're going to look at how that how your thought processes change. If you guys remember intro psych, it's different how you think when you're a child and how that changes over time. You start to be more abstract, right? You start to be more realistic. You start to understand greater perspectives. The psychosexual changes that are going on, your unconscious processes, right? So one of those things might be the opening of the sexual drives. How does that start to change your behaviors? Are you comfortable addressing that? Are you comfortable dealing with those newfound urges or not? Would be part of Freudian psychosexual perspectives. Of course, social relationships, the people around you, is going to have a big influence on how you develop as an adolescent, as well as your peer relationships. Those are generally strong influences during this time. School and employment. So we know school is where you spend most of your time in adolescence, and then employment. We're starting to see more adolescents starting to work earlier. So how does that affect your schooling? If any of you guys were working at the same time as schooling, hopefully not during the school year, but if you were, that made school a lot tougher than if you only worked it over the summer or if you didn't work at all and you got to play all summer. Serious problems, mental health is a big concern, especially during this time of COVID, not having the usual high school year if you were in high school and just graduated. But reflecting on that, whether mental health was something that was discussed or not during your adolescent period. Was there bullying going on, for example? Now we have cyberbullying, so we have the internet, and of course certain trends that can influence adolescent behavior as well. Thinking of the Tide Pod challenge, hopefully no one took part in that, but that a lot of adolescents did eat Tide Pods. So the U.S. population is growing. In this adolescent stage, you can see there's an upward trend, so that's good. That means where our population continues to grow. But on a state by state analysis, we see that New York is actually not grown as much. There's a negative 15 to 0%. So we're in that orange stage. And so you might hear this a lot about declining high school graduation, leading to declining college entrance rates. So the colleges in New York are kind of concerned about a lower enrollment rate because the pool of adolescents graduating from high school is just decreasing. There's not a new generation of individuals who are getting into that age for college. But you can see other places are growing, so not really a concern in enrollment as much. But generally, there's a lot of states that are in that decline stage. So people are having less and less children. The children are costing more. Daycare costs a lot. So um, yeah, so you can't afford to raise as many kids if you got to put them in daycare, which costs tons and tons of money. You decide, let's not have that next one because we just really can't afford it. That's one reason. Or you just don't like kids. They're a lot of work. All right. I think we mentioned some of this. Yeah, the new issues with modern times conditions are not seen by previous generation. Basically, in this current generation, we are generation, I don't know, you guys anyways, not me. I think I fall into the Generation X, teens in the 1980s and 90s. Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, Millennials are discussed a lot. That might be part of the millennials actually, and then generation is the next one. So I think you guys would probably be considered more of the millennial generation. So I mentioned this before, but our emerging adulthood, we are adolescence is lasting longer. They're not deciding on their careers as much. They're going to school, figuring all that out, and as well as they're figuring out life. So figuring out who you want to marry. Do you want to get married? The society expects that out of individuals to get married, but that's not really necessary. We are evolving into a society that you can be independent. Right, so the internet is playing a big role in how all this interacts, right? Because of the internet, you have expanded your pool of potential people you can involve yourself with. Back in the day, you knew your high school people and you dated people who went to the same high school. Now, with the ability to move around, car mobility, cars being cheaper, gas still being relatively cheap, but because of things like Tinder, you are able to interact with people in a wider area to mingle with. But that brings a lot of issues as well. There's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information, right? Where do we find out the truth? So that could be potential problems. And the internet is endless. So there's a lot of things with internet addiction, like porn addiction could be a new evolving threat for adolescent, mainly males. But that's the truth of it. But other forms of internet addiction, wanting like streamer um, mentality. Everyone wants to be a YouTuber now, TikToker kind of thing. Be always being on the stage. What does that do to your development? Cell phones, again, being always on edge. The cell phone can be fun because you always have something at the tip of your fingertips. get on the internet and stuff, but at the same time, you're always on edge because you're always connected to somebody. Where it's that downtime for yourself, and you know, because of that, you are always able to reach out to anyone. You might feel, in essence, kind of lonely that you aren't reaching out to someone. So it's just kind of this weird paradox, right? You have anyone you can call, but not anyone you want to call could be an issue as well. You have tons of friends on Facebook or Instagram, but not really have any friends. So a new paradox. All right, some other stuff. Adolescents do not exist in a bubble. So the social, cultural aspect of that has an influence, right? Our materialistic society, our parents' work hours, how much they're working. Do the, as you know, during COVID, if your parents or you yourself as a parent might have lost your job or had difficulties finding employment, how did that trickle down to your family? Longer work days, work seeming to never decrease. You know, the rich get richer, but the working and a woman continues to work themselves uh, to exhaustion. The expanding workspace, we definitely saw that during COVID, right? You take your work home. Now it might not be coming back to work only. You might be stuck in that scenario where you work at home all the time. I know I do as a professor. Our hours are not just during your teaching lecture times, but also beyond that. There has been a trend of women working and single mothers. Women are finding greater independence and not needing to rely on the male breadwinner, and that leads to more single mothers and raising children as single mothers can be a great, great, great challenge, right? I not have that experience, but just being by myself with the kids, that's difficult. So not having a partner where you can, go to, that's tough, and that creates a lot of issues. It also has some benefits too. That's that one person that you're super close to, but that can be a challenge. A lot of it takes a village to raise a child. It's what I'm thinking of. Adolescents in those aspects may try to find employment. So especially in those single household, now the adolescence is also working. So there's less time to develop that sense of family bonding. If you're always both of everyone in the family is kind of working in that sense. There's benefits, of course. You get your own money, you can spend it how you want, but with money and freedom comes potential issues. Materialism, for example, what to buy with all this new money that you have. Teens got into vaping a lot because they got their money, of course. They can do whatever they want with it. What products are safe or unsafe for teens? Where can you go? Kind of things. And yeah, mass media has an influence on what the newest thing to buy is. And that happens with kids too, even probably early adolescence. The current trend I'm thinking of is fidget toys. All the kids, little kids in the neighborhood are getting into fidget toys. When I was growing up, it was Pokemon cards. So every kind of generation has these trends of purchasing that's going on. Right. There is a need for higher education. You really can't earn that much with a high school graduation anymore. A GED anymore. Everyone's kind of expected to go to college. So there's both goods and bad with that, right? We are getting more affordability in that sense. Um, the infrastructure bill that was passed just recently, for example, is supposed to give free community colleges to everyone. So there is that increasing educational and attainment there. So that's a double-edged sword, though. Not everyone can go to college. Not everyone has the resources or the availability to do so. And the cost of higher education is higher. So OCC was used to be cheaper, but increasing costs every year, and that's across the board, not just community colleges, four-year institutions, private institutions. Everything is costing more to get into the door or get into the pathway of earning more. So you're gonna have to pay first and get your success later. Right. There's a decline in marriage rates. I know I'm going through this kind of fast because it's supposed to be like a mini lecture, trying to get it down as quickly as possible. But yeah, there's less people getting married, more divorces. People are marrying later. This leads to smaller family sizes. And that may change dynamics too. If you have a big family, you can't focus on as many kids. But if you have less family, like we do in my family, we have I have two kids. But my parents had like 5 kids. So you can see the shrinking family size there. You can devote more resources versus having a bigger family. And that was it. So I finished right in 15. The next mini lecture is going to focus on research methods. So yeah, good luck in the class. Don't forget to do your discussions. Bye.